Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Comedian's Paradise, a podcast where we speak to some of the best names in comedy, some absolute mavericks of the comedy world. Now, today's guest is Candi Clare. She's an absolutely magnificent guest. She's head of talent and development at the New York Comedy Club, one of the best comedy clubs in all of America. She's an absolute wonder. She's got a lot of insights for any comedians that's looking to emerge out there. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. So you got into what do you make of comedy as a whole? We're interesting bunch, aren't we? We're amazing.
I have an entertainment background. So I went to school, and a few places. Actually went to school in England, did performing arts college there in Bath years ago in the 90s. Went to like an acting school in New York City. And so I have like that kind of a background. So when I started working with comedy clubs, it was people that I had actually gone to these schools with and were either working and starting in comedy or were working there like part-time. And so I kind of got in that way and worked like within the comedy club, bartender, server. It's usually how it works, is that's how comedy bookers start, by working in the service part of things, because they're in the room. They know all the comics. They already have a relationships. They know what works on stage. So it's a natural flow for someone like that to become the booker. So that's what happened. So I started with stand-up New York, which is the Upper West Side, 14 years ago.
Oh, wow, okay.
And started booking with them, I want to say 2016. And so I was there for a few years, then left there and went to New York Comedy Club. New York Comedy Club, we have 3 locations in New York City, one in Stamford, Connecticut, and one in Atlantic City. So I'm the head of talent development for 5 of those. And the third one in the city being Stand Up New York. So we took over that space. So it's kind of wild to be a booker for a new club, but taking over the old space that I worked at before. So I've been in it for a long, long time.
Too long. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, sometimes it does feel like that. It's definitely one of those, and I'm sure you feel this, you have to love this because it's grueling. It is even the act of doing stand-up comedy, it's like you're on stage to get an immediate reaction. So you're probably suffering with some sort of emotional stability to begin with. And then to try to make a career out of that. It's also one of those things, and people don't seem to realize, it looks like the easiest thing in the world to do. People see a stand-up comic, and because they are professional and so good at it, they're like, I can do this. And then once you kind of get in there and start to do it, you realize, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be.
To be honest, Candy, there's nothing that I love more than someone who's in an audience who thinks that comedy is a piece of piss,
Right.
And they go up on stage and they do terrible after making such an inaccurate judgment.
Right. It's hard. It's one of the hardest things because as opposed to theater, right? You're performing at someone, you're sharing your experience from the stage. In a comedy club, and especially in New York City specifically, it's a very intimate relationship with the audience. You're there to connect with them, also share your experience and be able to relate and share that energy with these people that spent a lot of money or probably from out of town, and they want that experience, right? So, it's a very, very interesting thing, but it's definitely like the good ones make it look so easy, so it's definitely something you do have to love. You have to love to be either on my side of things and on the stage side of things to really make a career out of it, because it's a long haul for sure.
What is it that made you fall in love with comedy and the industry as a whole?
I honestly, for me, like I said, I worked with like actors, theater people, and then got into comedy. And I actually started with a lot of comics, even when I was a bartender server, that are pretty famous now. So it's kind of, you're in something with somebody, right? So you're building a community with someone. And for me, there's nothing better than when you watch the evolution of a joke. When you watch someone go on stage and they're just like reading it off a card, they're going through their notes and they're trying to workshop it together, and watching that become something every time you kind of see it on stage. For me, the art of the joke is why I love it so much. And also, I love comedians so much. As fucked up as
Me
everybody
too.
is, I just like they're near and dear to my heart. I'm a mama bear. So, um, so that for me is like being able to be in the room and do that. Now, of course, dealing with 5 calendars and personalities and managers and agents and stuff, that part I do not like at all. And if I
Yeah.
didn't have the tether of being able to be in the room with comics, and also like I do workshops and being able to do that, it would be a lot different. But luckily, I've been able to sort of create a path and be able to do both things, which has been great for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of what you said, I completely agree with. Part of the reason why I still love comedy is I love the people in it. I love
Yeah,
even the people that I don't get on with. I never find it boring in comedy. There's all
right.
sorts of amazing
And
things
you
in it.
work in joy. Is there nothing better than goofing off and cutting up with your friends and then you get
Yeah.
paid like 25 quid or something to, you know what I mean, to go out into the night? It's such a rush.
No, and what? Yeah, I mean, you feel like a rock star. There's no better feeling in the world when you get a room full of strangers you don't know from Adam laughing their
Hmm.
heads off.
Yeah,
Nothing better.
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's definitely there are people that have jobs and careers that are in far worse industries, like, I don't know, saving children's lives. Boring. We get to work in comedy.
Do what's been what have been moments that have what have been memorable moments you've had happen that you can talk about, because obviously there's maybe some things
Right.
that, but that have really made you that are examples of why you love comedians and love comedy as a whole.
Well, again, I think for me, so I guess the big thing was the pandemic, right? Everything was shut down, everything was affected by it, nothing was happening. And at the time, we were doing comedy in Fairfield, Connecticut, which is like a boutique hotel, and they were always doing it in the lobby. Now, of course, you couldn't do that there, but what they did have was a large space next to the pool out back. And we were able to do that with like beer sponsors and things, create like a festival. We called it camp because it was like every weekend we were out in this field doing comedy. And what happened was is the guy that like kind of ran that organization for us went to college with Mike Birbiglia. You feel familiar with him?
I've heard of the name from somewhere. I know that.
So he's very well known here, does a lot of one-man shows, pretty prolific in this industry. And he lived probably a few hours away, but also was a little bit health compromised, was desperate to do comedy and write stuff, but also was didn't want to be at risk. So because of that relationship, he came out every Monday with a stack of index cards. And then just you watched him take a stack of index cards, workshop these jokes, and then whittle it down, which eventually became a Netflix special 2 years later. So watching him do that process. Also during that time, we had Bill Burr, Ronnie Chang, um, Dave Attell, who is one of my absolute favorites to watch. We watched what he did, which was the early stage of is the special that he had come out a few months ago. Um, who else? Hassan Minaj came out, John Mulaney, and then he went to rehab a few days later. I was like, God, he's very, energized, not realizing he's off his mind on cocaine. But so that experience for me was pretty wonderful because it was certainly at a time that everybody was in the same boat. They're like, you couldn't have an ego because you couldn't have a space. You couldn't, like, an agent and manager negotiates and isn't going to do shit when you got people sitting in the lawn. So it was wonderful to have an organization of people that just loved comedy, people that were big names, and just having that meeting point of everybody just loves to be here. Everybody loves what's happening. And then to also see what came out of that later, for sure.
Did you ever do stand up yourself?
I did it a few times. So when I was, before I became the booker, I was like, in that phase of life where I just want to take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of me. Let me see, I have an acting background. Let me see if I can do this. So I did it 3 or 4 times, like open mics or bringer mics. I don't know if you guys have those there.
Yeah.
And that's also for me, I was like, oh, this is not how do you say things and it not feel like you've said them 1,000 times before, right? So like a musician, how do you sound like you're just having the best time that you've sung this song so many fucking times? That for me, I was like, God, it really is a skill to be able to hone your material and then be able to deliver it in a way that it sounds like you're delivering it for the first time. So that's what I learned. Also, I don't know how y'all stand these lights. I can't see if I'm sitting on a stage to like do a talk or whatever, and the lights are on. I'm blinded. I'm like, this is the worst. So God bless you for that one thing.
Now, being a booker and a talent manager, it must give you a lot of joy seeing someone that has immense talent that you know maybe even doesn't believe in themselves here, but you are able to sort of develop them and turn them into something amazing. And then on the flip side of that, the difficult thing is handling comedians' egos when you don't give them the spot that they want.
So I don't, because I'm on the side that works for the club and we put together showcases and things like that. It's not a headliner show. It's not about you. It's about having a show that's 5 comics that do 15 minutes, right, with a host, that Deb from Peoria, Illinois, who just spent $1 gazillion to come and sit down and watch, that every comic on that show hits a sensibility for somebody in an audience. So I don't have to deal with egos so much in that sense because it's not a headliner show. It's not about you, right? I have found that there is ego in the TikTok comedian community.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
so that one has been a very interesting filtration system throughout the last few years. So what ended up happening was, so for me, I deal, honestly, I get to deal with the best parts of comics because what I deal with them on is being able to come in and work on material and bounce around town and are, there with their friends. It's not about them having to hit ticket sales or make a certain percentage of the door. So for me, I don't have to deal with egos as much as our headlining booker does, because they also dealing with managers and agents, which can be the worst. I don't have to deal with them either because I'll even tell them straight out. I will work with a comic directly when it comes to working the
Yeah.
showcases at the club, but I won't work with managers and agents for that. It's just adding another person, another wall, you know what I mean? So for me, yeah, I don't have to deal with that too much. I will say during the pandemic, while the most magical things were happening in the field of Fairfield, Connecticut, people thought they were hilarious as they played to their phone, right? So how many comics came out of the pandemic because they got such large followings doing comedy to their phone? And
Yeah.
then managers and agents who also have not been working in a very long time took advantage of these people that had a lot of followers to put them on stage because they're going to sell tickets. Also, clubs wanted to make money. But what you're doing is you're putting someone that has no live show experience on stage. So what ended up happening across the country, I'm sure everywhere, was these people that just had a gazillion followers because they were hilarious when they were in their bedroom or in their basement on their phone. You put them on a live stage, you're asking them to do something that they do for 1 minute at a time and then do it for 45 minutes on stage in front of a live audience. What ends up happening is these people, even though they came in because they followed you on that social media platform, leave. They
Yeah.
have to get other comics to close the show. So it's like a very different kind of a thing altogether. And that was something that we did face really early on because so many tickets were being sold. And it was like latching on to this. But also, these comics didn't have the tools to know how to work in that atmosphere, to be gracious, to know how it is to work with other comics, to collaborate, to work on your craft, to be able to work on stage. So a lot of them that did from the jump do those have kind of petered out, filtered out, because you can only live comedy has been the same formula since the beginning of time. It works if you know what you're doing and you've got the experience to do it. That's it. Be professional, be funny. It doesn't get it's no more complicated than that. So that's something that I think it still happens. And people have also, comics that do work all the time have figured out social media in their favor, right? So, but they've got the chops to back it up. So it's definitely been interesting to sort of watch that play out for sure. Like Jeff R. Curry, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's a comic that I've known for a lot of years. Was with him when he taped his Stephen Colbert taping, which, this was probably 2017, 18. And then is a very funny guy, has worked really hard at it, and then found his niche and is able to get like 1.4 million followers on social media, but it translates to real ticket sales. So when he goes on the road or he's listed on a show, it will sell out immediately. But this is a person that's done the work and continues to create an audience and a fan base for himself, but also is, relatable across the board, like has figured it out. So that's like a very good example of how the social media can work for you for sure.
So with social media comedians always wanting to do your club, do you just look for a video or do you go for recommendations? Because I don't know if I'm right on this, but I heard that at the Comedy Cellar, if you want to get in there, you need 2 or 3 comedians that are already playing there to recommend you.
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing for us. I think it's same thing for most in New York City. I can't speak like exactly, but for me personally, it is a comic recommendation, gets you on the list to audition. Like you have to have 2 recommendations to be considered for an audition. We also have at this point a minimum of a year wait to be even considered for one.
Whoa.
Because I'm never going to say, oh my God, you're so funny, and then not have room to work them. That's, you know what I mean? Oh, you're passed, but I don't have any place to put you. So I won't even hold auditions unless I have room for them to be able to get in there and be working and be in rotation.
With it being one of the biggest comedy clubs in New York, how many applications are you actually going through?
I get probably 30 to 50 emails a day.
Thank you for responding to mine.
We didn't ask to auditions, a little bit different. So
30 to 50 a day. How do you not go mad with it?
Well, we do have it filtered through. So it's like they email, an auditions email, and then they get an automated response. So it's definitely one of those things where it's, it is filtered. And guess what? A large percentage of those go unanswered. They just do. Like that's why it's very important for us to say considered for an audition, right? So yeah.
So as you got so many to go through, do you just look through the first 10 seconds to see if they're likable or something?
So for me, I generally, before they get to the audition process, I generally am already familiar with them, right? So I'm generally already familiar with who they are and what they're doing. Because on my end of things, it's not about your social media followers, but it's about your comic followers. What comedians are following you? Are you integrated in this community? Like, I'm not going to hold your hand. I need to know that you know what you're doing, that you're here, and that you're in a peer group and, know how this works. So I'm generally already familiar with who they are, or have worked with them on a workshop or something before they come into that stage. So yeah, so that's definitely how that works. But I would say, I've been doing it for a really long time. I will know probably before you even take the mic, just based on your energy. Yeah.
Whoa, that.
Yeah, like I said, it's that intimate energy and relationship with the audience. When someone walks on stage, especially in our main room, which is like it's a black box theater, you can hear, it's very, very, very intimate. You can feel the energy off that person walking on stage. If they're feeling that space, if they're there to be in this room with you, you can feel it pretty much from the jump. So can the audience. So it's not just me coming to that conclusion. An audience member feels that too.
What has been the most, and tell me if I can't say this, but what's been a horrible moment where you've seen someone get on stage and they do really badly, but it's taught you a lot as a booker?
So there's a comic. He's a pretty big one. I won't say his name because I wouldn't feel comfortable doing so, but was clearly going through something. And this is something I've also seen, not to this extreme, but where people are angry. This is, again, you're running from one place to the next, right? You're doing jokes, you're trying to do this thing, and, it's all, kind of nuts. And so what happens is you're going on stage with baggage sometimes, right? You're walking from a breakup text to get on stage and then have to tell jokes. And that's a part of being a professional, right? Is being able to leave your baggage at the door and go in and do the job that you're paid for. But sometimes, obviously, that kind of stuff's going to get the best of you. Sometimes outside circumstances, mental circumstances will get the best of you. So in this one particular case, yelling at the audience, berating, walking them, you know what I mean? Punching walls, walking out, that kind of thing. That I don't like. And I have seen things of that nature happen a few times. And then, or comics getting in fights. That happens very rarely, by the way, very, very rarely, but it does happen. And I've seen that before. So I just think it's, yeah. So that would be for me, is when you attack an audience or you're mad at an audience because you're not getting the reaction that you thought that you deserved because you're coming in there upset about something else. That is probably one of my biggest things.
And no, I'm not going to ask that question. But what about audience members? Do you get the same? Do you know what your crowd is? Do you get a certain clientele, or is it just completely all over
So
the
it's
shop?
New York City, right? So for New York City, certainly the neighborhoods local to where each club is a little bit different. So you get locals and that way. But the majority of people that come to New York Comedy Club, are coming for a New York comedy experience. So
Yeah.
they could be from many walks of life. We get a very international audience in all the rooms. We have a club in Lower Manhattan, which is near NYU. That's obviously, for the most part, a much younger audience that comes in. And then, then we have one in Midtown. That's a little bit more of the old school audience. That was the original one that's there. It's been there 10 years. So that has, the local neighborhood following. And then we just opened the one that's Upper West Side, which in its history has been a predominantly Jewish area, but is also now like more family oriented. And we're getting peoples and fans that are coming from like Harlem and up north and things as well. So even
Okay.
that dynamic of that room is different than when I was there 6 years ago.
Okay.
So it's very interesting to watch that kind of roll and play out.
How important is it to get the lineup right in terms of the comedians you put on?
I mean, again, I could do it pretty quickly. I've done it for a very long time. For me, it's about being able to have diversity in every sense, which means, uh, that you're kind of able, that someone in the audience is going to feel like they relate to somebody that's on stage. I don't censor anybody by any means, but also kind of look at the energy of the flow from one comedian to the next. Is like, this one's a little bit more quiet, so you want to make sure the comic after has a little bit more energy so that you have a rolling show, right? Now sometimes, because it is, I can have 20 shows a night in all different places, and you've got, you know, 5 comics on each one and everyone's bouncing around town. A lot of that artwork that you planned at the very beginning when you put it together changes because schedules change, trains break down, people run late, something happens. It's definitely one of those things. But for me, that putting together a lineup is my art form.
Would you say that you are the Picasso of booking gigs?
I would say I'm more the Atticus Ross. Do you know who that is?
Who is Atticus Ross?
So Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails and Atticus Ross, they score a lot of films, and then Atticus works with him on Nine Inch Nails projects, the whole thing. But what happens is Atticus is more of the person that takes the sounds that Trent's created, cuts them, moves them around, rearranges it so it works in a song or like in a flow. So I feel like that's who I am. He's British.
Okay, yeah, I should
Yeah.
know. I'm going to look him up after this
Yeah.
interview, okay?
Yeah.
Did, one thing I found with occasionally American comedians that pop in the UK, and I've heard this from, and I have a few friends that are big comedians in big clubs like Top Secret, Comedy Store,
Yeah.
and they say that some of the comics that they've had come over there from America, because they're so used to talking in loud, dodgy bars and some very
Mm-hmm.
strange places, they think that shocking is funny. And they said that they've had a couple of instances where they've had a couple of American comics who have completely destroyed the room. Does it go the other way as well in terms of when you get British comedians coming over in America? Do you notice that it can be a bit difficult?
I think obviously it's a very different thing. Also, you have intermissions when it comes to headliners and shows. So that's a different thing for especially comics that are warm-up feature comics, right? That's something that they have to like shift and adjust for, to take a break and then come back. Here you power through. There is no intermission. It's usually table service, waitresses, things like that. For New York City, I don't think so. I think it translates quite well because, again, we do have such a vast international audience in those rooms. If a British comic went to, Idaho, it might be different. But I have always found and work with a lot of British comics that it translates equally across the board for sure. And I know American comics that go over into UK shows love it. Love
Yeah.
it, love it, love it, love it.
But yeah, that's the main thing. But I've heard here and there that's what on the negative side. That's what's happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what have been? What's the thing I wanted to ask you now? I've forgotten now. I have actually forgotten what I wanted to say, Candy. Is there? Do you have a particular style of comedy that you tend to book for, or are you just simply whatever's funny? If someone's dressed as a chicken and they start making chicken noise, if that works, you're on the
No,
bill.
I mean, listen, if you got that going on, more power to you. But I'm booking shows that, again, they're different and diverse, but it is relatively a very much a purest form stand-up comedy show. People come out and they want to have music cues and they got props and, they're bringing up keyboards and, a full costume change. That's not going to work for 15 minutes of your time, right? So it's like, if you're doing that at your headlining show and you got like all kinds of things going on, God bless, go for it. But in my line of putting together a showcase, that kind of stuff doesn't really do it. I don't even like impressions.
Oh,
So yeah, yeah. But I am a purist in that way. Something that's unique to you, show me who you are in this amount of time. Let us be on this journey with you. Personally, I love the absurd. Like, I'm a Monty Python girl. I love the fucking ridiculous. One of the best comedy experiences I ever had was being this is before I was booking. It was like a quiet show. It was a bringer show, right? Which is basically you bring 5 people and get to do stage time. And he rolled up there, smelled like patchouli with a suitcase, stood on stage and was dead silent for 2 minutes and said, it would be a different movie if instead of James Bond, it was James Boring. And it was dead silent for 2 minutes, James Boring, and then left the stage. It was so fucking ridiculous. But the fact that this guy committed to this, and it was just like, I just thought that has stuck with me my entire life.
oh,
Always.
okay.
Yeah.
Would you get him back?
I don't even know who it was. It's like this man literally got off a bus, rolled into the club with his suitcase, did that, and then just left the world completely. Maybe I imagine it. Maybe it's fantasy. I don't know.
It was me.
Feel free to use that though.
I
James
mean,
Boring, it kills.
where's he from? Where's he from? I mean,
I don't know, and I don't know anything.
I
Not,
had
I
a
know how,
haircut
yeah.
recently, so and I had a shave, so I'm looking a little
Right,
bit different, all
right,
right?
right.
And I've also changed my voice to English, so
Yeah.
before I was American.
I don't even know what his accent was. I just remember every moment of that and thinking it was wild. I remember watching, there was a documentary or something with Jerry Seinfeld, Louis C.K., forget who else was on it, but it was like talking about those kinds of moments. Like, what was something that made you laugh so hard? I remember Louis C.K. saying, someone just rolled on stage and said, sitting on a cock because I'm gay, like in like as a parody to that song. And like that stuck with me forever. Just like the silliest, stupid things that make you feel like a kid inside, right? Like that's for me, like silliness is my thing. But of course, I will book a show for the smart and for the eccentric and the feelers. So
How do you manage to get the right lineup for each of these different audiences?
I mean, I think it's just knowing the room. First of all, like I said, each room kind of operates a little bit differently. Also, different nights of the week bring out different people as well. Obviously, a late night weekend show is going to be bringing out drinkers and the rowdy. So you need to have a show that isn't just quiet people, speaking, ethereal thoughts. Like you need to have like a bigger energy to be able to sort of be in that presence with them. Um, but so, I mean, the lucky thing is, I mean, the wonderful thing is that we do have three rooms in very different places that I can have fun with lineups and know that this person's going to do well everywhere and that the audience is, like I said, very international and vast. Um, but it is something you do have to think about looking at the times and the neighborhoods for sure. It does make a difference.
Um, and with how do you and also how do you manage all the people you got under you? You got all sorts of like you got a like it's not just you. How do you manage all these? Not just the comedians, but how do you make sure that your team works well? On top of
So
that,
we do have a booking team. I'm the head of talent development. We have an assistant who works with all the developmental comedians because we do have like the more younger, newer comics. They audition, but then they're a part of our late night program, which means you get, booked in the free spots. You're going up at the end of the show while people pay their checks, like a developmental spot. And then we have someone who does all of the headlining shows, all produced events. So we do have a team, it's three of us in place to do that. But the system that we also have in place is once you are passed and your thing, you get to submit your avails, right? So I can go in and be like, who's available on this day? So for me on the logistics side, it's pretty plug and play. It's pretty easy to do. So, and again, even between the three of us, we've all done it for so long that it is just definitely one of those things that comes second nature to us. This isn't a job that people seek. It's definitely one of those things that, like I said, you have to love being on this side of things. Being a gatekeeper can be very, very hard because you have to be the one to deliver great news, terrible news, right? So, but we've all had experience in it, we've all done it together. And I'm just, we are one of the greatest comedy club organizations in the country. And I'm really proud of that. And that's a lot to do with the people that have come up in it.
do what's it? How does who's can I mention on a good note? Who's a comedian that you've developed recently that's a really new comic that you've helped develop from like I don't know before he couldn't change his nappy. Now he can go to
Well,
the toilet and do it himself without anyone.
yeah, he's big boy now. Well, I don't actually start working with comics until they're at least 3 years in. I can't teach anybody how to be funny like but what I can do is give you skills and information on how to take when you have your comedic voice and be able to navigate a path that makes sense for you to make a job out of it. Whether that's, okay, you should write this or start a podcast, or maybe you should, not do it at all. So, I mean, there's a few of them. There's a few of them that, like, I think just comedically to watch develop has been amazing. One of them I would say, and I just directed his special earlier this year, is Maximilian Spinelli. I think he is just super naturally talented, funny, he figured out who he is, what works, and knows how to pivot. Another one is Jack Finnegan, as far as joke writing skills go. That's one of those that I can watch it go from an Instagram story to an open mic, and then watching him work it throughout, and then of that evolve on stage into a big stage. Um, you know, So, and then of course there's the people that I kind of started with that are doing really well. So really proud of them, like Shane Gillis and Dan Soder and Mark Normand. Um, Jessica Kierson is absolutely one of my favorite people to watch, and someone that has been grinding at this and been one of the funniest people on the planet for a very long time. And only now is selling out, getting the absolute accolades that she's deserved for so long. So there's just so many people that have just really excite me. And it still does. Even when we do auditions, it might be someone I hadn't seen before, didn't know, or had seen a long time ago. Those are my favorite. When someone auditioned 3 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God. Because you do have people, and God bless their hearts, that will do the same audition that they did 3 years prior. And I don't
Whoa.
forget jokes. I'll forget a face, but I won't forget a joke. So if you're going to come and do the same material when you didn't get passed on it the first time, something's fucked up. Something's fucked up. But to watch someone that you saw 3 years ago and you're like, yikes, or just was green or just didn't have that, going back to, watching them flourish and then like really step into their own. And that's happened quite a lot recently, which has been amazing. And it's like, okay, I see you. Yeah.
You're pleasantly surprised, isn't it, when it feels, do you feel a joy when
Yeah.
it happens?
Yeah. Yeah. So it definitely feels good when it happens. It's obviously unfortunate when you see nerves, like obviously, and I understand it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal to be able to get an audition at a bigger club. You want it so bad, right? And so nerves, but I've watched nerves just completely kill somebody, right? And it's somebody that I know that's very funny. But at the same time, the audition isn't just about you being funny. It's about understanding that I could trust you to own that room when you're on stage. I could trust that you're going to do your absolute best and that your nerves aren't going to get you. So that gets very tough. Um, and I understand that's like just something that everybody deals with in some sort of fashion. But again, it comes with experience. The more you get up on stage, the more you get out there, the more you say yes to things, the more you do have shit gigs. It just makes you stronger and more prepared that when you do get called to the show, that you're ready for it. In Amy, who was a friend of mine, actually was the booker at the club that I'm at now, had a very good analogy, which was, and again, you don't have Thanksgiving, but the Thanksgiving table, right? Or I guess the holiday, whatever, dinner table where you have the whole family's coming, there's the kids table. And it's not about coming and sitting at the grown-up table whenever you feel you're ready. It's about you being ready when you get the call, right? So just because you feel like you're ready to do it, that doesn't mean, oh, you feel like you're ready? Well, come on. It's like we have to have room. We have, you know what I mean? Like you have to be ready already.
You got to be set. And what is it? What's it like dealing with some of the big names in the back room?
Like the big names, I mean, again, I'm in a situation where I have only really had positive experiences. In the 14 years I've been in this industry and been in every capacity of, working with big names, smaller names, I will tell you that across the board, comedians, stand-up comedians, like they're a community, no matter what level that they're at. Like it's very much important than when they're around each other to be in the room. So as far as egos are concerned, and um, I don't see them. Like it's really nice. It's really, really nice for me. You know, no one's gonna come at me because I'm a gatekeeper. But even if you're going at somebody else or a staff or whatever, that becomes a problem. You just have unbooked yourself. But they know this. At this point, they know this. So everybody is very respectful of everybody. It's really nice.
Oh, okay, nice. Um, do you, one of the things in the Edinburgh Fringe, they often, when reviewers go and watch a big shows, they often don't let themselves be known. Do agents and like, I don't know, big reviewers, when they come into your club, can you tell who they are from the look of them? Or are they often hidden? Do they hide themselves? Do they wear, I don't know, fake
No,
mustache, fake
nobody knows who
glasses?
you are. First of all, so much is done virtually at this point. You know what I mean? There are definitely agents and managers, that the good ones especially, that go in to watch live comedy, or like the booker of South by Southwest, or like the bigger festivals. They'll come in. They generally do more so go to more independent shows. But no, nobody's hiding anything, anybody, anywhere. It's, and no one is also probably going to recognize somebody on the other side of that, especially since there's a lot of big producers or big agents. They send their assistants. Like,
Ah,
yeah,
okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That was
yeah.
interesting. So you look for someone young in their 20s or 30s, the assistant that's emerging.
Yeah. But again, it could be anybody. So you honestly, I mean, I'll know because they'll reach out to me before they show up, right? And there are also sometimes, especially if it's like a big festival booker coming in, that I'll cultivate shows that I think these are people that I really like for you to look at for this. Um,
Do you tell the performers or do you like, no, let them do their best?
it depends. If it's someone that I've had a relationship for a long period of time and I think it would benefit them to know, I will. But for the most part, no, I don't.
It will put them off, won't it, a lot of the times?
Yeah, yeah. But again, if it's someone that I have a relationship with and known for a long time, that I feel like I want them to know that they're there, like bring your A game. Like, in that case I will, but for the most part I won't. Because again, like I said, the nerves, even an audition for, just getting working at unpaid spots at the club, is going to put you over the edge. And then I'm going to tell you, like, the booker for South by Southwest is there. It's not going to help you either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said you're very good at detecting whether a comedian is going to do well or do bad at the gig, but what about, how can you tell that if someone's got something special on stage, that they're going to be great? Because I've interviewed a lot of people on a
Yeah.
podcast, and I think even myself now, I've done quite a few shows. Sometimes you can just tell when a comedian has something different to the other acts you see.
Well, always. I mean, I can always see that. Yeah, it's definitely one of my, like I said, it's definitely one of those things where if I saw a few years ago when they auditioned and I'm having you back, it means I saw something then, right? Um, but what people don't seem to understand is how much the reps and the time and consistently be writing and evolving a joke makes the biggest difference in the world. Because as a comedian, the only thing that you can control is being funny. Be professional, be funny, never be late. I can't even explain to you. I know that you were late today,
I'm sorry.
but tardiness is my biggest pet peeve. Like, and especially in the sense of, and I'm sure you guys have like time sets, like you'll get the light, right? So you have 2 minutes left. Don't run that fucking light, you know? I've had comic once who thought he was king of the ship and get off stage after running the light by 10 minutes and said to me, "You're welcome."
Ooh.
And I said, if you can't do what you came to do in 15 minutes, like you are supposed to do at every club across the city for the last 15 years, then you're not doing what you're supposed to. Like, it's rude to the show turnovers. Everything is so tight. It's rude to other performers, especially in a place like New York where you're going from one thing to the other all over town. So, yeah, for me, my biggest pet peeve is tardiness and understanding the light. Know it. Ask
Okay.
questions before you get on fucking stage. Ask the host. Introduce yourself.
Okay. So
Where's the light?
how do I make it up to you, Candy, after this?
Yeah, 3 years. 3 years.
Okay, 3 years. I do like New York. I've visited a few years back, and I sound like a 5-year-old child when I say this, but I am in love with one thing from New York. The artichoke pizza.
Oh, do you see? So that's like a late night spot, right? Or at least the one that's on 14th Street. There's one on 14th Street. There's always a line out there at like 1:30 in the morning.
I don't know. I was told by one of my friends that the artichoke pizza is the best pizza to get. I went and did it, and I was all over it. I
Yeah.
hope you don't mind me swearing, Candy. I was all over it like flies ran shit.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
should have said
They got a
that.
good pizza. They got a good pizza, that's for sure.
No, it's a delicious pizza. I mean, I don't often like the anchovies or any of that stuff, but that has persuaded me. It's turned me to the dark
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. It's good. They got some good stuff there. Ain't gonna lie.
Is there any other things in New York that you're like,
God, I mean, there's a place that's near our 4th Street location that my friend and I kind of stumbled in one day during in the rain that was like gorgeous, called Mano y Mano. And they don't even have vodka. They have soju, which is like sort of a rice thing, but they do espresso martinis with it. And we had like orange margaritas and stuff. Phenomenal. Like that's one of those like New York moments where you find like you walk into the Garden of Eden out of a storm. Because I even think like we were exhausted. It was like we're just running in, like let's have a quick drink before we go home. And it ended up being like an amazing New York night. And there's so many of those places that are there. That's what's really wonderful about the city.
yeah, no, New York is a beautiful city. The only thing I don't like about New York, and the one thing that scares me, when you see something rustling in the bush, it's not a fox, it's not anything else, it's a big rat. That's the thing that scares
Or
me.
it's a human man.
Oh, that's true. Oh, I'm sorry, what happened to you? Is that where we first met, Candy?
Yeah. You get your share. Of course, I worry about everybody, being out there. Like I said, I'm a mama bear, but yeah.
It's part of the city, isn't it? It's like rats and the homeless they're well entrenched in the
Right.
city.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you were a rat, wouldn't you want to be like in the mecca of food
Oh
and
my
homeless?
God, yes, yes, yes. Like,
So when they
and
started putting, pandemic, those like things in the streets that would take up so you could have outdoor dining, they weren't built to code, right? They were built to be a temporary thing, but a lot of them became kind of the fabric and extra seating for their business. But what happens is rats live underneath them.
oh,
And
okay.
yeah, it's gross.
And they're so smart as well. I've seen a video of it where it set up it deliberately
Oh
set a
yeah,
mousetrap which
hive minds work together. Yeah, they have probably office space and telephone lines. Yeah, for sure.
they're too clever. It's madness. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
for
do
sure.
find that New York, one thing I will find about New York more than any other city I've been in, maybe this is a stereotype, maybe this is wrong, but I do feel like New Yorkers will say what they will be rude and say what they think, even if it's offensive.
I think it's I think it's big cities in general, right? Because you have the same thing in London, you have the same thing in Paris, Chicago. They probably have a gun. And, I just think that's kind of in general, like the metropolitan way. Um, so I think, and I definitely feel it when I'm in New York City, because I live in North Carolina and I go back like once every 4 weeks. When I land, I'm like, oh, this is a toilet. And also, it's that energy where for what it's like, you're going from one thing to the next and you're walking and you're trying to eat at the same time. It's that energy of, I've got shit to do. I'm killing today. I got this going on. I have to cry and have a fight with my mom on the phone in the middle of Times Square because that's where this kind of fell into that schedule. So I think it's like, I ain't got time for bullshit. I ain't got time for it. So it's like, what do you need? What do you got? So it's not a rude. I think it's like, let's get to it.
Yeah.
I would say comedy as well in New York City, like comparatively to LA, is quite different in that way. So New York, people come to New York, they go to Chicago to get that sort of that get grind. That grind is what makes you good. You're running from place to place. You're tired, you're stressed out, you're constantly writing jokes, you're bouncing around, you're living, you're cold, you're poor. Um, but that's where like the beauty of that stuff comes from, is being in that grind, and that's how you get strong. And LA, it's a lot more laid back of an atmosphere. You can't go bounce around from one place to another place because travel time wise, you really wouldn't be able to. And I find that the style of comedy is more storytelling. It's more like, I'm going to take my time and take you on this, journey with me. Where in New York and Chicago, for instance, it's like your structure is fucking solid. So
Yeah, I know. When I was in America, like Boston is a city that I wish I'd spent more time in because they're incredible. But I found that Boston, Chicago, New York, there was something special about a lot of the comics there, and I was surprised at the level of Chicago comics compared with New York. I was really impressed.
yeah, yeah, it's a great comedy city for sure. And
And
so,
you,
Austin has got its thing too. Austin, Texas has kind of become its own little mecca of well, but that's more of an alternative kind of scene too. People take, some more risks there and take their time to do so. It's a different scene and style altogether. A lot of times comics from Austin don't translate on the stage in New York. Um, so it's interesting to sort of watch as different comics from different places or backgrounds work. Now, obviously, like I've had Ramesh in, comes in, does a set in New York City, he kills it. Of course he kills it. This guy's been doing comedy for a gazillion years. So again, no matter where you're from or what you're doing, your style, blends into a career. So it's like you'll understand and know who you are and what works for you, but also understanding that you've got people paying gazillion dollars on the other side of that and how to make it all work together.
now, if we've got a young comic listening right now, I don't know, they're about 5 years old, and they want to be no, let's not be serious. They're too young.
Eddie Murphy Raw.
That's true. It's probably happened.
Yeah.
If you got a young pup comedian listening now and they want to take advice from, shall I say Mama Bear?
Yes. It's fine.
What advice would you like to give him?
Listen, I mean, I keep writing, find your tribe. That is the biggest thing. What people don't understand, because you are going on stage by yourself, it is very much a collaborative effort to find people that you can sit down and write with and throw, tags at and bounce riffs off, to have that relationship. And keep writing, say yes, be professional, say yes to everything in the beginning. You have to. You're never going to be bigger than anybody else. Don't worry about people stealing your material. Get what you can out there, get heard, be out there. Don't get hung up in social media. Live a fucking life. If you don't live a life, you have nothing to write about. And just constantly be writing and find a system that works for you. It doesn't mean get up at 5 a.m. and do this. You'll find what works for you. Post things that work for you. It's the accessibility that I think makes what the relationships build and helps you build your material and become a strong comic. It'd be on fucking time.
Yes. Now, for anyone that's listening right now and they want to find out about Candi, how do they find out about you? What's your Hotmail?
I'm
What's
a
your
mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
You
your
want my
Instagram?
Hotmail?
What's your TikTok?
Yeah, I'm just at Candi Clare, at CandiClare, on Instagram. Obviously, not putting a whole lot out there, but that's where I'm at.
Okay. Guys, that's been Candi Clare. I hope you've enjoyed her. I've certainly enjoyed it. We've got a lot of fantastic episodes coming up. We've got an episode where I spoke to a former homeless person, now comedian. We've got a guy that was autistic. And if all goes to plan, I don't know what it is. Sometimes when you say you're going to do something, it sometimes ruins you actually doing it. But I'll take the risk and I'll say tomorrow, if all goes to plan, I'm going to have Simon Evans from Live at the Apollo. But hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys at next episode.
Thank you.
Yeah.